Howdy peeps, and welcome back to the channel. Another how I do for you today, and this is something I've seen cropping up occasionally, and it's one of those things that can improve a model without too much difficulty. It is fiddly to do, and that is making your own seat belts. Now, for most planes, you'll either get no seat belts, moulded in, photo etch or decals. The decal ones do tend to look a bit iffy, especially in the larger scales, and sometimes the photo etch ones, especially if they're pre-painted, when you're trying to bend them around the curves of the seat, the paint can chip or flake. It's not the best of things. So what do we normally use? Well, personally, no particular brand, but I normally just use standard fuse wire, normally a 5 amp on anything 48th or that kind of size, maybe 10 or 15 amp if it's a 32 or a 24th. And then tape wise, I look at the size of the decal or PE or whatever, and I've got a selection of these ISO tapes which are available from umpretail.com. They come in a variety of sizes, points from 0.4 millimeters, 0.7, 0.3, 1.5 and 2.5. I think there might be another one kicking about here somewhere. It might be a 2mm, I can't remember. However, for the purposes of this video, so we can actually see what we're doing, because if I start working with sort of 1mm tape and 5 amp fuse wire, I'd have to be zoomed in so close you'd never see a thing, because I'd never be able to keep it in shot. So what I shall do is, rather than use that, I shall use some good old-fashioned 6mm Tamiya tape because it's visible, and 30 amp fuse wire, again just so you can actually see what we're doing. Now, the actual process is not difficult. As I say, it's more fiddly than tricky. It's not a really difficult technique to master. It's just, as I say, fiddly. I mean, dig down beside me. You'll give a clue as something else is coming up. That is a Spitfire seat in 48 scale. If I zoom in, obviously there aren't any seat belts on it at the moment, but if I tried building the seat belts for that on camera, you would not see a thing because my fingers would be in the way, everything. So what I shall do, again, make of the fuse wire, or it doesn't matter, you can use lead wire as well if you've got access to that, and it's probably easier to work with. It's certainly slightly softer, or even solder if you've got very fine solder. So what we would normally do is we'd look at the decal, measure up, and I say decal or P or whatever, measure up and see what size tape would be best. If we have an ISO tape in the right size, we'll use that. If not, we'll trim one suit with a knife, which can be easier said than done to try and trim them straight. And also you can go by the decal and it will give you an idea of buckles and what kind of belts you need, whether it's just a simple lap belt with a couple of shoulder belts, or whether it's a more sophisticated Martin Baker or rejection type seat belt where you've got belts everywhere. I would say to start out easy and do a 48th single engine World War II prop plane. Be the easiest way of doing it. Right, so we've got a bit of tape. For some reason I decided to stick it down on the cutting mat. I'll figure that out in a moment. There must be a reason why. And we'll take some 15 amp fuse wire, or 30 amp, sorry. Let's just unwind it all. Flat nose pliers are good for this. We can work out all the various kinks in the wire. As it comes wrapped around the card, it tends to be rather kinkified, and not in a good way. So we'll just straighten out a bit roughly. And then, not using our good snips, using an old pair of snips. No, don't use the ones with the nice sharp blades on them that you use cutting sprues. Use an old pair and just chop a length off. Put those out of the way for now. So first things first, let's sort the tape out. Where did my knife go? This is one of those where, yes, I've managed to lose my scalpel. There it is. You usually find it by the blade. There we are. Now we're going to want to trim the ends of the tape off. Either straight, but I tend to prefer to go with a slight triangular end, just because it makes it easier when you double the tape over itself, that you don't get big overlaps that you then got to trim off. So we just remove these little bits, and again, as I'll always say, if you're using a very sharp knife like this, be careful. I know we've all cut ourselves on our knives as modelers, but it's best not to do it if you can avoid it. I've cut my fingernails, mainly because they were getting a bit too long even for me, but also because I managed to snap my pinky talon. Right. So we have a semi-seatbelt shaped piece of tape. Now we need a buckle, loop, or whatever it happens to be. Again, if we're using the finer 5 amp fuse wire, my 48th would bend it around on tweezers, which would be perfectly strong enough. But because we're going silly big, just to make it slightly more visible on screen, what I will do is bend it around my pliers, just as a pair of flat smooth jawed pliers, until we get a sort of buckle type shape appearing. Again, this isn't going to be very good, but you'll get the theory. And this is actually easier with thinner wire because it bends so much easier. And there we go. Now we trim off the excess again with our old nippers. Try to keep things fairly neat, give ourselves a little extra. And we'll just straighten things up a little, so everything meets up. Now your best way to do it is, if I pop that down, if we look at it as a buckle, and I'm going to zoom in again here because otherwise you'll never see what I'm talking about. Move it roughly in the screen and get a pokey device, paintbrush handle will do. Where we've got the join in the loop, again it's easier with the smaller wire. Try and get it in the middle of one of the long sides. That way when you put it in the tape it's not visible. So there we go. Now we just have to hope we've made it wide enough that we can get the tape through it. We haven't, so we'll trim a little bit off the tape. Very easier than trying to rebend a new one. Do we have a straight edge to hand? I usually do. There we are. One of those tools that is regularly useful is Not just a straight. Oh, I'm still zoomed in a bit far. You can't see what I'm doing. Wrong way. There we go. A little steel ruler. 6-inch one is generally big enough for 15 centimetres. Just to work as a straight edge and for measuring things as well when you need to. So we trim the tape down a little, just to make our life a little easier threading the buckle. Again, we'll lift that. Again, being careful not to slice ourselves open. Take our buckle. Am I in shot? Yes, I am. And we just thread the tape through the buckle, which sometimes it's easier said than done, especially when the tape just wants to stick to your hand. Other way around, sharp. If you can get the joints hidden in the again, this is, as I just demonstrated, it's easy to get these back to front, and we just fold the tape over, doing our best to make sure it actually lines up with itself, which is where the pointed ends come in useful. Get it roughly centralised, and just make sure it's stuck down all the way. There we are. Now if we assume this is, because most seat belts are made up, you've got a fixed length and then an adjustable, so we'll do the fixed length bit here, which is sort of buckle at either end. So we'll try and get the actual, I'm doing this well out of shot again, aren't I? So this time we'll try and get the actual joint in a hidden place. So again, we just bend the fuse wire to shape. Oh, come on, you know you want to. And this is one of those situations where having smaller fingers is a good thing, especially with a bit of strength in them as well. And we just trim it off. And as the way we've done it, it's not flat, we'll just squidge it in the pliers, make sure it's flat. And feed it on the other end. And we've definitely made this one too small. Yep, let's make a bigger one. That is actually probably the right size for a 32. Just completely accidentally. So again, we just straighten out a bit more fuse wire. Again, so fuse wire, it's one of those things that's really cheap. I think a packet was like 50p and they last for ages. You can use it for all sorts of things, like adding detail inside the cockpit, wires and tubes and all sorts. Anything you think might benefit from a little extra detail. So let's make this one plenty big enough. Somewhat oversized. When we're trying to get it to line up like this, getting it to line up straight is a pig. So if you bend it with a slight twist so that, let's get that done. If we can Focus, focus, there we go. As you can see, it's gone underneath itself. And what we do when we trim that off is we then, as I say, squash it in the pliers. So I made it too small again. I have, haven't I? Yes, never mind. As I've not trimmed it off yet, we can still lengthen it a little. It will stand bending a couple of times, it's not too fragile. That should be a little longer. Is it long enough though? No. See, I'm too used to doing fiddly delicate. When I try to do it big and chunky, I get it wrong. So let's try that again. Let's go silly oversize, just to make sure. There we are. World's largest seatbelt buckle. Probably about 1/24 scale. And okay, this one looks a bit bent and mangled, but hey, never mind. This is just a demonstration, it's not going to actually be used on anything. So we have another buckle. Pop the tape through with the joiny gap on the sticky side of the tape. So it's hidden inside when we fold it over. And job done. Now to attach these to your actual cockpit or your seat, I'll just zoom in, you can see just how bad a job I did of that second one. On focus, there we go. Well mangled, there's the super small one I made. Now to attach it to your seat, if you've not got much sticky left on the back or you don't trust it, you can just use a piece of dab of super glue, that'll hold it. Painting it, just paint it the same as you would anything else. The tape will take the paint perfectly well. Also has a bit of texture to it as well, so it kind of actually looks a bit fabricy. If you can actually get away with just using a wash on it, even better. I think someone said you dunk them in tea and that will dye them, or coffee, and that will dye them a brownish colour. So I hope that's covered a little thing, one of those things that some people do and others aren't necessarily aware of how to. As you can see, it's a relatively simple thing to do, it's just trial and error. As I said, start out on a simple cockpit, if there is such a thing, a simple set of belts. Don't go starting out going, right, I'm going to make my own belts and do something that's got multiple seats and they've all got ejections. You'll end up going blind or throwing something in the bin. Start out, just practice a couple of times. You're not wasting a lot of material by just practicing. Anyway, enjoy your modelling. Hope this has helped someone, at least one person out. Enjoy your modelling. Peace. Rock on. Bye bye.